Kevin Thozet, miembro del Comité de Inversión CARMIGNAC. Hello.
Hola.
Ah, hola, en español.
I wish.
Okay. Thank you very much for being with us today. We are talking about Trump promises that United States will respond to Europe's tariff retaliation on metals. We have seen today the Trump's response. Canada says it will reach out to Europe to pressure Trump yesterday. Do you think now the economic and geopolitical blocks will shift? Will Europe become closer, for example, to China's production?
Well, first with the second question, the risk for Europe, if it comes closer to China, is that in fact Europe becomes the dumping ground of China, and that China basically exports its deflation and its overcapacity. Just to give you some context, I mean, China can produce every year 55 million cars per year. Last year, they produced something like 30 million. So they have huge potential to produce more, and it's the same for solar panels, for instance. So that's one risk. And then the question is, what would a kind of a deal or a closer European and Chinese relation be like? It would be what? Europe better access to China, and China better accessing Europe. And in fact, China has proven that it's very difficult or even impossible to beat it in terms of prices. And we talked about disinflation or overcapacity, deflation or overcapacity, and in innovation as well. Innovation in AI, innovation in robotaxis, for instance, in batteries. So to us, yes, Mr. Trump policies and approach to geopolitics is making blocks moving and moving very rapidly, but Europe has to find its own way, likely coming through improved competitivity, lower energy prices, industrial transitions, digital transformation, and the likes, and more integration, basically. And China too will have to find its own way, probably and very likely via domestic consumption and exports to other so-called emerging markets.
Getting to real numbers, is Trump right about when he's talking about the US trade deficit?
Well, to put this politely, he's not always talking sense. I mean, if we look at the recent trade deficit number he has been putting forward, for Canada, he says 200 billion, data are closer to 130 billion. For Mexico and the euro area, he's talking about 300 billions of trade deficits. The reality is closer to 200 billion for both Mexico and the euro area. And for China, he says, yes, something like 1 trillion. Reality is probably closer to 600 billion. And clearly, he's not always talking sense. I mean, he's claiming, for instance, that tariffs on Canada on dairy products are somewhere between 200 and 300%, that they were raised under Biden. In fact, those tariffs haven't moved since the Trump 1 USMCA accord, under the US, Mexico, and Canada agreement. In fact, there are quotas which were signed by Mr. Trump himself. They apply on tens of thousands of metric tons of milk, of cheese, of other dairy products, and they haven't been met. And it's only if they are met that, in fact, indeed, some significant tariffs can be put in place. But again, I'm not too sure that he's giving those figures for them to be accurate. What he wants to do is protect the U.S. middle class. And for instance, with Canada and dairy, there's something like 3 million jobs in the U.S. linked to dairy. So yes, he's not always right when he's talking about figures, but probably the agenda is not to just exchange on figures.
And the EU responds with tariffs this week, as does Canada. Do you think this could really harm the US economy?
Well, in fact, we have done this exercise of kind of, assessing what the impact can be. And in fact, if we are seeing kind of an increase, or if we are seeing an increase of 10% of tariffs, the negative impact would be of 7 basis points on the US economic growth. and upward of 11 basis points on core inflation. So yes, stagflationary type of dynamics, but in fact, it's something that is kind of, or would be workable. What is worse than tariffs is tariffs uncertainty, in fact, because if tariffs are implemented, private agents can adapt. CEOs can decide to invest elsewhere. Households can decide what they want to, or where to want to they allocate, or what they want to buy, and if they want again to invest or to buy alternatives goods. But the problem is that in fact, if we have uncertainty, you cannot adapt, and it's very difficult. And so for the time being, for instance, we are 2 to 3 standard deviation away in terms of political uncertainty. And again, the assessment we have made at CARMIGNAC of what can be the negative impact on economic growth is much greater than that of tariffs, around 1% lower in terms of GDP. Why? Because CEOs do not invest and consumers do not consume. So to put this in a nutshell or in a sentence, in fact, there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Kevin Thozet, miembro del Comité de Inversión CARMIGNAC, thank you very much for being with us today. Good afternoon.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Hasta luego, buenas tardes.